Greetings and welcome to the Happy O'Clock Radio Talk Show, where we're going to have a discussion on the biblical perspective of finances in marriage. And we'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a place where joy knows no bounds, where inspiration reigns supreme, and where the clock strikes happiness every time it chimes. Get ready to embark on a journey of spiritual enlightenment and divine motivation with none other than your radiant host, the beacon of positivity, the one and only Happy Patti. This is Happy O'Clock, the radio show and podcast that's not just a broadcast, but a celebration of life, love, and the miraculous. Patti Sutton, affectionately known as Happy Patti, is your guide on this uplifting expedition, diving deep into the realms of healing. Testimonies that defy the ordinary and the unshakable power found within the pages of the Holy Scriptures. This is not just a show, it's an oasis of encouragement, where we believe that in every circumstance, there's an opportunity for transformation. Tune in, not just with your ears, but with your heart wide open, as we explore the supernatural encounters in Christ that spark hope, ignite faith, and leave you breathless with the wonders of the divine. Welcome to a world where the clock always strikes Happy O'Clock.
So, welcome again to the Happy O'Clock Radio Talk Show. And my name is Patti Sutton. I'm also known as Happy, and I'm your host coming to you from Valdosta, Georgia. I'm a master mentor with the Zanke Couture International Institute of Pneumatology, a prison minister, and an office administrator. And tonight I have a special guest, Miss Hannah Johnson. She's from North Georgia with two Georgia girls here. She's a marriage and relationship master coach, a business owner, and a homesteader. A very interesting person indeed, whom I love very much. How are you doing today, Hannah?
Doing good. I'm really happy to be on. I'm excited.
All righty. Well, guess what? Today we're going to talk about finances in marriage, the biblical perspective. And I'd invited Hannah to come talk to us about that because I see a lot of strains on marriages, and I don't see a difference in believers and non-believers when it comes to divorce rates. It seems like there's not a difference there. So I thought maybe it'd be helpful if there was information put out there of how we can be different, how we can look at a biblical perspective in different areas of marriage. And the first one we're going to talk about is finances, but we're planning to do some more, like I guess you call it a series on different areas in marriage. And hopefully it will help strengthen our listeners' marriage. I mean, maybe you can pick up something that would be helpful to you. And that is our hope and our prayer, because we want you to live in a state where you are fulfilling the desires of your heart and living in harmony with your spouse. I mean, that is a desire, and we want us to live from a perspective of our Christ essence, living from that instead of being drugged down through the daily pressures of living in the world. So, absolutely. Hannah, where would you like to start on this topic? Is there
So it's funny though, finances is probably one of the hardest things that people deal with in their marriage. So it's honestly, to me, a good one to start on, because a lot of the time we just don't know where to start. And depending on how long you've been married, it can be hard at all different times, right? If you've been married a long time, you can have like a lot of history there, which can be really negative and really hard to overcome. And then when you're newly married, a lot of time you don't know each other at all, and you're just figuring out like how to work with the other person, and you feel like overwhelmed and like you can't make it work, right? And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about a few different things today about finances and marriage, and what can be challenges. So, one of the things that I have learned a lot about and that I teach people when I work with them with coaching is the difference between men and women and in all different areas of our life, but also our marriages, especially right in our relationships. So, when it comes to finances, you know, a lot of the time people teach like, okay, men are this way and women are this way, but that's not necessarily true. You can't generalize, oh, all men are good with money or all men. It doesn't work that way, right?
For
So,
real.
um, I would say that it really is a case by case. You have to figure out like the types of personality that you're dealing with. Is usually there's a I did Dave Ramsey. He has a course. I don't remember what it's called right now, but and I did it. My husband would not go with me, and
Really? My husband and I went to some of those sessions, those Dave Ramsey sessions, but we didn't, take him up on anything he was teaching us.
right, and we didn't really practice what he taught. But what I went through the course. This has been years ago, and it really just kind of gave me some fundamental ideas. But one of the things he says is like there's the nerd and then the free spirit, and that's usually in every marriage. Is that there's the nerd, the person who loves the you see, I'm not a nerd, so they're I think they're PDF forms or what is it called when you data entry. So there's the nerd that loves that they want to put everything in a budget and type it all up and keep track, and then they might be really thrifty. And then there's the free spirit, which may or may not be able to keep track of anything, and then also loves to spend money or loves to kind of like have fun and be a little bit more spontaneous. So I would say that's kind of like a good base of looking at it, but doesn't in there, but there's a twist on each one of those, because like my husband, I wouldn't call him a nerd where he fills out anything on the computer or has any kind of budgeting skills, but it's like each person is different with money is the bottom line. Okay. And
Yeah.
so you never usually marry someone that is just like you when it comes to finances. I mean, that's just the sad truth, but and it can be hard, but the
And the thing is also we're not really taught how to do our finances in school and all. It's not part of the
no.
curriculum. So that adds another layer of pressure. I mean, so maybe in some families they teach that. My family didn't. It was a real hush hush, and like nobody knew anything about the finances that our parents, handled. It was like one of those things that you're not supposed to talk about.
Right. And I mean, if anything, you are born into a family where you have two parents that are opposites in how they handle money, and you just see conflict a lot, or you see either conflict or you see no communication, and or however they are that works or doesn't work, you inherit that to an extent because you're just there watching it, observing it, and then finding it to be normal, right? And so,
Mhm.
that can be something you want to look at is like, what were my parents like about money? And, what was my mom like? What was my dad like? And then, your husband can do the same thing, like, or you could do it for him. A lot of people, there's one person in the marriage that doesn't really want to look at stuff.
Mhm.
It's just, this is just kind of a norm to an extent, but it doesn't mean that's a lifelong thing. It just means that usually when you're a person who's very like say introspective and wants to like work on your finances or your life, the other person might be more like, I'm not really interested in talking about that. And so it can be a frustrating thing for a lot of people. But then I will say, like, hope for the future is I've been married 21 years, almost 22, and my marriage has gone from one way to a completely different. And I would say financially, communication, everything has improved like tenfold over the years, right? And it's through like I was always the one that wanted to work on everything, and then my husband was kind of like, I'm busy, I want to go hunting, and so he didn't really want to have those conversations. But now we have those conversations all the time, and we talk about our future, we talk about our decisions, and we work on things together as a
Do you know
team.
what made the switch? While you're on the subject, do you know what made the difference?
I would say a lot of, honestly, it's not just one thing. I would say maturity. One sense for my husband, like as he got older and he got more serious about things, right? When he was younger, he was thinking about having fun and like he would work and he had a job and he was responsible in that way, but he always wanted to like have fun and go hunting and do things. So he was, and then also I think in his family, they didn't really talk about conflict or problems, right? And so that was a habit for him. And then in my family, we we talked about them more, right? And then that was my personality where I wanted to have conversations about things. So there was a slow shift in that area over time, but also it was a building of trust, right? So like for me, I needed to learn how to trust him in a lot of ways, but he also needed to learn to trust me because in a marriage, a lot of the time, the first 5 to 10 years, that can be a big problem. Is you see like the flaws of the other person after the honeymoon stage, and then you just
Yeah.
focus on that instead of learning how to trust the person. And really, trust is like a huge deal. But we have to learn through communication. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, though, regarding this is how a lot of the time, and this isn't always women, but it's typically women, we go into a conversation with our husbands about one thing or another, but we're specifically talking about finances today.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we get emotional or we get upset. A lot of the time, like we have such a history of, say, there's, things that haven't gone our way or we're upset about, and we will get upset and get emotional, and then the conversation kind of goes downhill from there. I know for me and a lot of people that I've coached, the women really can't communicate without getting emotional when it comes to money or a lot of things. um it's a little dry in here. My throat's a little dry, but so basically, for years I struggled with this because when I would go into a conversation with my husband about really about making decisions, let's just say as simple as that, making agreements or coming to agreements, and if it was about money, that was one of the hardest things we would ever talk about. So I would go into a conversation with him about that, and then I would start to get upset. He might say something that upset me or that bothered me. I would get upset and I would get emotional, and then I would start to say mean things or start to defend myself, and it would turn into an argument or a fight.
Yeah, it's like it's not very rational when we react out of emotions.
Exactly. And I honestly think that where we go wrong a lot of the time, or where I went wrong, and I've seen a lot of women do this, is they'll go into a conversation with their husband about something, and do you have any water, Joe? Because I'm going to need it. Can I just have your water? I need it. Okay. So I will go into a conversation with him, or I've coached so many women that do this. And what we do is we combine like 5 problems from all different areas of our life into one conversation. And sometimes it's the conversation about money, right? So we'll be talking about, oh, we need to buy a new car. And instead of actually having a conversation about buying a new car, we're talking about the kids and how they need to do better in school. And we're talking about how you didn't plan a date yet for this month, and I feel neglected. And we're combining a lot of topics because that's the way our minds work.
Mm-hmm.
Is we think about a lot of different things,
And then it all come out at one time,
right? We want
like a waterfall.
Well, it's like when you're talking with your girlfriends, it's basically like you're what you might call it emptying your basket. That's a term I learned.
Mm-hmm.
We go through the day, we go through our life, and we're filling up our basket, like we're gatherers, right? We're not hunters, we're gatherers. And so we're filling up our basket with experiences and different things and thoughts and different things that are on our mind, concerns we have, like we worry a lot, right? And then when we go into a conversation with our husband, we're emptying the basket and talking to him about all the things. But the problem is that a lot of the time men don't think that way, and it becomes very overwhelming for them very quickly, because they're like, what are we talking about? I thought we were talking about money. Sometimes it can be like a bomb. Like, I just got tricked into having a long conversation about all the things I've ever done wrong, or all the things that aren't working in our life, and it can feel extremely overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then they might react to that with emotion, some type of emotion or anger, right? Or frustration, or they may be impatient. And then you feel rejected, and it can get really bad, So I think that that's like the bad side, the negative side. But so one thing that I've learned about that, when I learned how to have conversations with my husband like it's a business meeting and prepare
So you
for
plan
it.
it?
Yes,
Like,
yes. I plan it. I would, if it was me, say I wanted to have the conversation, because it depends on, the role you have in your relationship. Like, are you the person who pays the bills? Like, usually one person pays the bills. Then, you might set up an appointment and say, hey, okay, so when can we talk about the bills and about our future with this, whatever it is. And then you make an appointment. Like, it's really treating each other with like the utmost respect and honor, right? And instead, a lot of the time as women, we might get kind of entitled in a sense, like, and I mean, trust me, I feel entitled all the time. Because it's like, if you've been married a long time, you're kind of like, he's going to do what I want, right? But the truth is, I feel like what works best is to say, hey, we need to talk about this. When are you going to have time? It's going to take 30 minutes or it's going to take an hour. And it's best to overestimate, right? So men are a lot more generous out the front than out the back, right? So it's like, if you ask for an hour and you take 45 minutes, then he's like, wow, cool, I could totally do this again. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of time what we do is we'll say, I need you to listen to me. I need time to talk to you. And I just need 10 minutes. And then an hour and a half goes by.
That's not good, right?
Right. Because it's totally like,
it's not respecting
like
or honoring the time. Yeah.
No. Well, it's not showing that person respect for sure, because, you're acting like your needs are more important. I mean, and I'm guilty of it. I used to do it when I was younger, because I needed that time. But the thing is that I didn't have the self-respect and self-esteem to ask for the time I actually needed out front. So that was more of a me issue than it was a him issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't know that at the time. I was, just winging it.
You know what this makes me think of? I hope it doesn't mess up your train of thought. But as you're saying this, it makes me think of how priests in the Old Testament, how they had like a schedule and were disciplined to it. And it was a matter of honoring their position and giving it utmost respect, like you're speaking about here. And so I know that Zane had taught us to do to put like a alarm on our phone to do a priestly remembrance, I'll say, and then like however often that you wanted to do it, say if you want to do it 4 times a day, that you would look at a particular scripture on trust, and that setting the alarm would remind you to do it at a certain time. And so this, there's nothing wrong with having a schedule and sticking to it, so it shows a discipline. It's like you're honoring and showing discipline to what you prioritize.
Absolutely.
So I just want to throw that in there, the pneumatological aspect of what you're even talking about, scheduling an appointment to meet about finances, even that. Yes. I see the parallel in that. That's really good.
Well, and if you think about nowadays there's all different kinds of men and there's all different kinds of women when it comes to like femininity and masculinity and all that stuff. But when you think about the world that we live in and how it was built, okay, it wasn't built by people who were just winging it. It was built by people who had a plan. They were
Mm-hmm.
structured and they were disciplined. I mean, you know, Eiffel Tower, like all the buildings that you see in any big city.
Yeah, and we are to be creators. And how can you
Yes.
create if you don't have a plan?
Right. So the more that you get educated in that way, like the thing is, like for me, I was a housewife and at home mom for a long time, and I had a small business for a little while I was doing that. But I was doing that. That was my main priority, was raising my children. I homeschooled my children and stuff like that. So I didn't really understand what it took to be my husband and what it took to like pay bills and do all those things, because I didn't really have to do that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then as I got older, I started working more. And then in the last 3 years, my husband and I have totally changed roles, where now I pay the bills and I have a business, and we moved cities and we started a whole new life. And he stays home and he homeschools my son. So it's like we live in a totally different, like culturally, we live in a totally different lifestyle than a lot of people. Um, but what we've figured out is that there's certain cultural ways that you function in your relationship, like standards that we live by, right? Like, the man goes to work and he provides for the wife, and then the wife and the children, and then the wife stays home with the children and she takes care of everything. Well, then nowadays a lot of people, mom and dad both have to work full time, because to afford everything, it's so expensive now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
It
we're
really
just
is.
in a very interesting time when it comes to finances and marriage, and I think that that's a big part of what's going on with um, divorce, is that it's women are getting the responsibilities that men have always had, and then they're also having the responsibilities of the home because their heart is with their children, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it can be a very hard thing to get through and to
And
feel like a team.
it's and also even women whose children are grown, it's like if they've always been responsible to do all the things in the house, like the meals and the laundry and keeping the house clean, and if they've always done that, and then all of a sudden they're working outside of the home, I mean, shouldn't that there be a shift in that so that there's not an unbalanced, it's like an unbalanced vehicle, like you have riding
Yes,
with two wheels instead of four. So
absolutely. Well, I
that's
think
something to
that one of
consider.
the things that I learned from Zane, um, when it, I think I've studied under Zane like 4 years or something. So one of the things that I learned from him was about equity in the relationships that we have, really in every area of our life. That God, He sets up the world in an equitable way, right? And so
Mhm,
we want to treat people with equity, and then also we need to be treated with equity, like, because our human spirits are equal, and our you know we all have a human spirit with Christ in us. And so
mhm,
that makes us, to an extent, at this point, equal. And we're not, one is not better than the other, right? One is not more valuable than the other or more important than the
mhm.
other. That each human spirit has equal value. And then, as you know the priest that we are called to be today, that we want to treat people with that equity, but we also want to treat ourselves with that equity too, because a lot of the time we put ourselves behind, as what we've been taught in Western Christianity is to always put yourself behind everyone else, or, you know, um, we all know about that. So, getting where you actually treat yourself with respect and honor, and then you treat the people in your life that way, right? But when it comes to finances, it can be very complicated. But I think that focusing on the communication between you and your husband, and here's one thing I do want to say about the emotion, right? Is that, and this is from a different paradigm, a different type of teaching that I've learned, but I believe that it's very valid, is that God made us different. Okay. We have different hormones that are flowing through our body, and women are changing all throughout the month when it comes to how they feel about things, right? And even how we think about things, because how we feel and how we think, they work together, right? But as we're going through our cycle, or even if you're past your cycle and you're in menopause, your mind is changing throughout the month. Now, for men typically stay the same consistently throughout every day in and day out. And so when we're communicating with them, they're hearing us say one thing one day, and then a week later, we're saying something totally different, because our emotions and because our hormones have changed, and we're talking about something in a different way, right? And so to them, it can seem dangerous to trust it, right? Because it's like, okay, this isn't a really reliable source. I know for me that's something that I struggled with was, I would be reliable about money, and then I would be unreliable about money, right? And my husband would be like, hey, how am I supposed to trust you, like, to do what you said you're going to do? Because to a man, a trained man, okay, an ethical man, they have their word that they stick by, okay? And when they give their word, they keep their word. And then, like with me, that's not really that important. In the past, it hasn't really been that important to me to keep my word. But when it comes to finances, I had to learn that my word really matters to my husband. And like, so I would think, oh, well, I don't want to. I don't want to work as much as I was, so I'm just going to stop working as much as I was. So then I don't bring in as much money. And then my husband's like, listen, you told me you were going to, work this much and you were going to bring in this much money. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do it anymore. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you
Like,
got
we
to
have
keep your
plans. What is
word.
this?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then he then wasn't able to trust me to keep my word after that for a long time. Like, it probably was about 3 or 4 years. He kept on saying, I can't trust you to keep your word. And I was like, what? This is crazy. But it was because I didn't care about my word really before that. And then when I started seeing it, there's an impact to my promises, right? Like, if I
Yeah.
make a promise, and all this is tied in with women and emotions and communication, right? Because
Yeah.
our emotions can kind of get us carried away, and then we can forget
And,
about keeping our promises.
and it's also growing spiritually,
I can't talk.
because, it's like we're taught in the word to let your yes be yes. And so your word should be your bond. I mean, your word should stand. And it's something that we have to mature into. I mean, it's just
Yes,
another area of growth.
right. Yes, and it's something that, like I said in the beginning, when it comes to marriages, there's never really a general answer for anything. In, typically, it's like you can't just blanket, oh, everyone, this is what you need to do regarding your
Yeah.
financial problems, right? But
Mhm.
I think that, it's possible too, there's some scenarios where the man might get emotional in the conversation, and the woman is very calm and cool and collected, and then he's over there being irrational and thinking about, the problems and talking about other things like we were discussing. And that does happen, right? So but really, this is for anybody who struggles with that. And then this is the example I want to give is, so now I have a company and I have a business, and I am building my company. And the thing is that if I was going to an interaction with a client, and I treated that client and communicated with that client the way I did when I was 30 years old with my husband, we talked about money, I would not have clients.
Yeah.
Right?
Your
So it's
business
like
would go
now,
under.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it would be so dysfunctional, but it's like, what we kind of give a lot of time, we'll just be ourselves and kind of like let it fly and say whatever. But so now what I've learned is, like, when it comes to decisions and specifically finances, we will make an appointment. We will sit down and have conversation, and we will have our paperwork ready. Okay. Like, our evidence of what needs to change or what needs to be worked on or what bills we need to pay. And we will sit down and we will have a unemotional conversation. It doesn't mean it's cold. It doesn't mean it's, vacant or void. It just means that we're being logical and we're speaking about facts now. We're not talking about feelings. We're not talking about any of that. What we're doing is we're talking facts. So, if we need to improve our, say we need to pay down debt. So instead of having a conversation where we might bring up something from the past to prove our point, we would, say, okay, so what is it that we need to do to get this debt paid off? This is my idea. Do you have any ideas for yourself? And we work together as a team. Okay. Which is a funny concept because it's like when you're married, a lot of the time it's so hard to be a team when you're in those like challenging times. Right. But being partners and being a team is the most effective thing. Like if you combine efforts with your husband and you actually can become a team and learn how to work together, you're unstoppable. Like the things that you can accomplish are amazing. Right. And
Yeah, it's like when you work together, you can multiply your effort more than just by two.
absolutely.
I know
Right.
this is a very simple. It doesn't have anything to do with money, but a very simple um, experience that I've pointed out to my husband. He fully agreed. But I was making up the bed, and he came to help me, and he did the other side, and it was like it was done in no time. I'm sitting there thinking, usually when I do this, it takes me maybe 5 times because I'm walking around back and forth. And it's like, poof, we just did it. And so it's like how that multiplies your time when you work together.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's
And
the same way with having your business appointment and
yeah,
making your
because
plans with your finances.
if you can actually learn how to have business meetings with your husband and talk about all the details of what needs to be done beforehand, it avoids so much conflict. Like at this point, my husband and I barely ever fight when it comes to all the little everyday details. We barely ever have any kind of problems. But it's because we've had so many conversations to talk about the details of how we want things done. Like if we have, like, say, even if we're having like a dinner party and people are coming, we will sit down and I will be like, here's what I want it to look like. Here's what I want the evening to go like. And this is what we're going to have for dinner. What do you want to make? Or would you like me to make something else? Or, that kind of thing. Who's going to go shopping? And we cover all the details ahead of time. And then it happens smoothly. Now, here's what I can say is, to a lot of people that might sound overwhelming, but truthfully is, when you do it consistently, say you have one or two little business meetings a week for 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, you make it a habit, then over time you actually can have less meetings and talk for less amount of time because it's so easy, it's so natural and simple.
You've already done the groundwork.
Right. And
The foundation is this probably the most time consuming.
yes,
Right?
but it's like, the thing about marriage today that most people don't understand is that if you want a marriage to last a lifetime, and you want it to be not just you get along, and you want it to be, not just, oh, we live together well. You want to have a romance, you want to have intimacy and closeness and all that stuff. You cannot do that with no effort. You cannot do that with, like, we don't get any training on how to be married anymore. We don't,
Right.
if a woman's going to be a homemaker, she doesn't know, she's not usually typically taught how to be a homemaker, right? Or if a woman's going to work and then take care of the children at night and like cook and whatever, and then her husband's going to do his side, like, unless your parents taught you that stuff, then you don't know how. And so you're having to learn as you go. Well, but it's, in other words, it's a time investment to learn these things and to get good at it. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm going to go to college. And I'm not talking like college is bad. College is great. I'm going to go to college to have a career. Well, why not learn from people? Like, you find a woman in your community or a man in your community that actually has a healthy, loving marriage that you can see, oh, wow, they love each other.
That
They've
can
been married a long
mentor.
time. Yeah. And
Yeah.
ask them, or get a coach, hire a coach, like ask them, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Mhm.
Like, I'm struggling with all the things my husband, I need his help with. A lot of women don't know how to ask for help. They don't know how to ask for help. And so they live in a life where they're just doing everything themselves, but they don't. Now, I'm not saying we don't ask for help, because a lot of the time we do, but that's a whole nother probably podcast. Because it is a big thing for women, is where we feel kind of alone in the world today, where a lot of people don't have partnership with anybody, even their friends, where they kind of just are doing everything themselves, right? And so
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I've learned how to do, is to have people in my life to contribute to me, not just me always contributing to them, right? um
Okay, if that's a whole nother subject, we need to maybe do that one next week because that's a big deal what you're talking about. And
it
I
is.
feel like that a lot of people have that experience and they would like to know some remedies for that.
Well, and I will say that that really ties to what we've been taught in Western Christianity. I mean, I was raised in the church. I was saved pretty much when I was like 3 years old. I knew Jesus. Okay.
Mhm.
And I've always known Jesus, and I've always prayed to God and read the Bible and all that. And so I got raised, to be a wife, and I got raised to be a mother. And that was kind of all I knew. But one of the things that I learned from my mother is to put everyone else before me, and to never really take care of myself, and not even really know what I wanted in the first place, to know how to take care of myself, right? And so that those are things that I really had to work through, because like, I would never buy myself things, and like, if my husband bought me things, sometimes I get upset with him, like, just weird stuff, right? But it's like, everybody's got their weird stuff. We all do, right? But it's
Mhm.
like, a lot of the time we get taught, we get taught, it is a teaching in religion to, put yourself last, and to not take care of yourself, and to that may be an interpretation, but it's there. Right? So I've learned now, like, I'm a priest. I am valuable to God, and that I matter, right? And that if I do not treat myself with respect, self-respect, and dignity and honor, then I am never going to be able to be the person that He designed me to be on this earth. So I have to really continue to practice that, and to learn how to, like, apply it in my life, my everyday life, because in our everyday life is when it's the hardest to apply, because we can say it to ourselves all the time, right? You see it all over the internet, like, love yourself, you deserve jewelry, you deserve nice things, you're a queen, all that stuff. But it's like, in our everyday life, we have no idea how to apply it, like how to do it, right?
Yeah. And then that it comes back to finances. How do you afford to do it?
Right.
And
Well, then,
how do you prioritize what's important to spend the money on? If you don't, I think that's really good what you're saying about scheduling a time to meet and to make decisions on how you're going to prioritize different things financially, because it is a big deal. It is a big deal. Well, as to what you'll be able to do or not be able to do based on how much income you have coming in. I mean, you might
well,
not
then
be able to
one
do
of the
some
other
things.
problems, though, that women and men have is, because there's one usually, nerdy person, or a person who's a little bit more conservative, and then the other person's a spender, is that we might all kind of assume that the person who is conservative doesn't want things and doesn't want to spend money, right? But actually, they're usually the ones who deal with, like, an inner dialogue, like their mind is telling them, like, when they feel guilty about spending money. They may have been raised in a home where their parents didn't have any money, and so they were constantly told, we don't have the money. And so they're very thrifty, because they feel like guilty for spending money or whatever. And
Hmm.
then the other one might go out and just buy what they need. Like, my husband's always been like that, where If he needed something, he would just go buy it. But then he might say, well, we can't afford this other thing, but it was something he didn't really value. So now
Mm.
at the point in my marriage where I am now is I had to work on my own self-respect and self-love to be able to stand up for myself and say, you know what? This is what I want. I want to buy this, and this is for me, and this is what I want, and I don't feel bad about it, And because that can be really hairy dealing with that kind of stuff, because a lot of time one person kind of like puts themselves last all through their marriage, and then eventually they get resentful, right? And
Yeah.
hurt and then resentful, and that can definitely cause like a huge cavern between them and their spouse, because their spouse is over there just like, well, why don't you just buy it? It's not that big of a deal, you know. But then they're buying what they want for themselves with no problem, with no guilt.
Yeah.
So
Well, what do you think about what about in marriages? Say somebody's been married for a while and they haven't had these discussions. They don't have this foundation, and but they would like to make one. I mean, and but they have all this debt, or so, have all these financial issues. It's what would you suggest as the best place to start? Of course, I'm sure communication, but do you have any other advice on that?
yeah. So one of the things that I do coaching for couples, and one of the things that I do with couples, depending on their situation, but if they're struggling financially, which a lot of people are today, we just like go through and figure out what their situation is. Like honestly, just this is the part that's very hard to not get emotional, especially when you're alone together. There's no third party there to monitor the situation and kind of like mediate, right? Where you're
Yeah.
alone and then you're looking at all the bad stuff and all the things that are wrong. It can get so overwhelming and upsetting, and then one or both of you can leave feeling totally hopeless, right? And so when it comes to that, it's important to, like, if you can find, I don't know, like I do coaching, and I am available to coach for those types of things. But what I'll do is I would, like, I had a couple recently come in, and then we went through their bills, and we just, because people, what they do is they just make comments about their financial situation. Like, so that specific couple, that the woman is wanting things and saying, I really need this, but he doesn't want to spend it, right? Because he says, we don't got the money, that's always his answer for everything. Well, the thing is that, do we have the money or do we not have the money? And the only way you can know that is by sitting down and going through your financial situation and finding out how much money do we have. Because a lot of the time, like if a woman is a housewife and her husband's working and he's managing the money, and then he just keeps saying that, it instead of, if he showed her, this is the financial situation, these are all our bills, this is all our debt, and this is how much money I make, this is how much money is left over after all those bills are paid, then in her mind, it may actually make her feel better, even if they're totally broke right now.
Hmm.
Okay, this is our situation, so I don't feel rejected. I just feel like practically we can't afford it right now. So, okay, then she might even start learning about paying off debt. She might kind of link into the partnership of it and say, what can we do to pay this debt off? We've got, maybe we've got $5,000 or $10,000 in debt. That's not that much. Like, we can do this. And she starts helping her husband to like they do the snowball method, where you pay the smallest credit card first, and you until you pay that off. And there's a whole way of doing it, right? But there's a lot of
Yeah.
ways of doing everything. So, but it's like there's solutions to your problems, in other words. Like,
Yeah.
I I think living a life where you feel like you're a victim and you just have to live this way without any choice, it's usually because of lack of knowledge and information.
Hmm.
And I mean, God did not make us to be victims. He made us to have dominion and to be victorious, right? And even in finances, really. So he doesn't want us to just be stuck in our situation, right? We can get ahead, and we can have lots of abundance. And I mean, like, my story, with my family is, we've gone through all the different financial levels, and now, we own our property. We have 8 acres and a house, and we own our property outright, and we have a organic farm where we grow vegetables. My husband processes deer and processes pork, and we just have a really cool lifestyle, and we did that because we are partners, because we work together.
You had a plan.
Yep. And we used each other's assets. Like, he's good at a lot of things that I'm not good at, and then I'm good at a lot of things he's not good at. And so now we've got it set up where we're both doing what we're best at, and it's making us more productive, and you can
And
only get
happy.
better.
Because
Yes,
if it's something you're good at, you probably enjoy doing it, right?
absolutely. I love what I do. I love my business, and I really enjoy doing it, and also just the learning. It's like looking at life in a totally different way, because when you do different things throughout your life, it definitely gives you perspective of what other people deal with throughout. Like, I always was the one at home, and so now it's just so interesting because my husband's like cleaning the house, and then I'm like, paying the bills or whatever, and it's just interesting because I know I went through experiences as I was doing that, where I think about things so differently now than I did before, but it's because of I have a different life now, but it helps me understand him a lot better than how he used to be.
And looking back over how you've grown and how working together has been so beneficial and honoring of God, the Christ in you, honoring each other, the Christ in each other and in yourself. I mean, the whole scenario is, you can look on it and have a sense of accomplishment, knowing you did
Yes.
it the right way. You did it the way that honors our Father, our Heavenly Father.
And I
So
will
it's really
say
good.
regarding that, in my marriage, in the last 5 years, so I'm 45, and when I turned 40, I had like a huge change in my life. So, like, almost like I don't know, when people go through something very, very extreme, and then all of a sudden everything changes. So that kind of
Mhm.
happened to me. And then God took me on a path for several years, for three or 4 years, now it's 5, where I was just learning so many new things. But my marriage before that time was not what I needed it to be to feel loved and to feel cherished and to have just the marriage that I needed, like, for my own heart, right?
Yeah.
Um, and what happened and what I learned, specifically what I learned from Zane about the interpretation of the Bible, um, in Hebrew, right? And just the difference in what I learned from him, it actually gave me myself, because for so many years my life was just to take care of everyone around me, and I didn't really know, I didn't do anything that I wouldn't say I did things authentically from like what I wanted to do. I did what I was supposed to do, what I thought I was supposed to do. And
Yeah.
but in my marriage, it actually brought out something in my husband that I've never been able to experience until now. And the man that he is today is because of what I learned from Zane, and what the disciplines that I took on, and the change I made in my own heart. And a lot of it was the recognizing who I am as like a son of God and a priest, and recognizing the spirit within me, and then acting accordingly in my marriage, and learning how to set boundaries, learning how to do those type of things, communicate better, like what we're talking about now, right?
Yeah.
Become partners in our life together. Like, we're in our Garden of Eden together, and we're partners, right?
And you're
And
creating. You're
Yes.
creating a life for yourself.
And
That's
really,
beautiful.
it could,
Yeah.
I mean, we could do anything we want from here on out. Like, the future opens up to have anything that we want in it, uh, from the heart of God. And it's from the heart of God. Like, He wants us to have so many amazing things while we're on the earth.
Hmm.
Um, but a lot of the time, it's our concepts and our doctrines and things that really make things dysfunctional, you could say. And
Yeah.
so it's been pretty freeing and amazing to have that experience. And I look forward to kind of seeing what happens from here.
Well, let me ask you this. You were saying that you do counseling or coaching, rather, probably is a better word, but how can our listeners make contact with you if they would like more information on that?
Well, so I don't have like a Facebook page for my coaching, but you can contact me on Facebook through, my name's Hannah Leota Johnson, and I'm sure that Patty can put that somewhere in the feed. Um, and then you can just private message me on Facebook or ask me to be your friend and then private message me. And I I let's see, for anybody who is listening to this call or any of the other shows in the future that we do, you can private message me, ask me to be your friend, and then I can have a initial call with you just to see if it's a good fit, if it's something that you feel comfortable with me and I feel like I know I can help you. And then so we can do that totally for free. And then after that, I'll tell you like how, and I'm not expensive. I'm not one of those coaches where I charge tons of money or anything, but it's something that I love doing. When I feel like it's the right fit, I love to help people with all the different things, ins and outs of their marriage and their family life, because it makes all the difference, to talk about it with someone who actually has experience with these things.
Thank you for saying that. Okay, so now your name is going across the bottom of the screen. Do you see it?
Nice. Good
So
board.
if you look her up on Facebook, it's Hannah Leota Johnson. Did I say your name correctly?
Yeah,
I
and
usually just call you Hannah Johnson, but her
I
full name is
know
on her
that's my
Facebook.
maiden
So,
name, Leota. And so, um, other thing is, if you're concerned that your husband doesn't want to get on a call or your wife won't get on a call, that's totally fine, because I do a one-on-one with one of the spouse or whatever all the time. And actually, I find it very effective to work with one person, and then sometimes we'll have the other person come on. Um, and we'll start a coaching sessions with the other spouse, but you don't got to worry about that, because honestly, I worked on my marriage for many, many years by myself. My husband was not trying to worry about any of that stuff. And
mhm.
then now we have conversations all the time about things that we never could have talked about before, and work on things together. So
That's
it's a
great.
slow progression, sometimes.
Well, I appreciate you coming on Happy O'Clock and sharing this great, valuable information. And that I think maybe a key point I got from it, as far as finances in marriage, would be to honor each other and schedule a time to sit down and make a plan. Bring everything to the table. Set a certain time frame so that both you and your spouse know what to, how much time to allow. And if it should go over, then maybe you should do more than one sit down. Schedule more than one, but to honor each other, reverence each other, and see Christ in each other. See your spouse as you are dealing with the Christ in them, and speak to them accordingly, because you sure wouldn't call Christ names.
Yeah.
That's one of the, I would say that's my main takeaway from the day. But Hannah
Well, and
has
I want to
agreed
add
to come
one little
back.
thing.
Okay, go ahead.
If I can, is that hopefully this will help some people out there. Is it's normal to feel like that you and your spouse are speaking two different languages. And one of the problems with our communication is that we really are speaking two different languages. One's like Chinese, one's like Italian, and then we're just like, why are we not seeing each other's, we may not even really know each other, right, because of that. So I help people to decipher the other person's language and actually hear what they're really saying instead of what
Oh,
you think they're saying.
that's
um,
really good too. Communication. So
oh yeah.
I don't really know. We hadn't decided what we're going to talk about on our subsequent marriage series here, but as a listener, if you want to put in comments a topic that you would like for us to cover in marriage and relationships, yeah, put it out there, and we'll know
Yeah, any
what.
suggestions
Yeah,
would be good.
yeah,
Well,
that'd
it'd
be
be cool
great.
to know what people are dealing with and if they have something specifically they want to, talk about
Yeah,
or hear about.
I want to give a shout out to my girl Michelle. Hey Michelle, I'm glad you could join us. She's one of my buddies. But
Awesome.
well, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you and to grant you peace. And may you walk in the blessings and the favor of the Lord, because that is what is yours, what has been given to you in Christ Jesus. And until next time, we say shalom and be blessed.
Shalom. Amen. Thank you.
Yes.